The room was quiet in the way only hospitals and old houses become quiet. Not peaceful, but heavy. A single lamp glowed beside the bed, its light soft and yellow, casting long shadows on the walls. The air carried a faint scent of antiseptic mixed with something older, dust, time, and memories that had nowhere left to go. On the bed lay an old man. His chest rose and fell slowly, each breath sounding like it required effort. His once broad shoulders were now thin beneath the blanket, his hands fragile, the skin wrinkled like folded paper. Wisps of silver hair rested against the pillow, and his face, lined by decades of living, looked strangely calm, as if he were already halfway somewhere else. His name was Samuel Hale. Once, he had been loud. Once, he had been strong. Once, his voice had filled rooms. Now, the room belonged to silence. Beside the bed stood Ava. She moved quietly, carefully, as though the slightest sound might disturb something sacred. She checked the IV drip, adjusted the blanket, and wiped the old man's forehead with a warm cloth. Her hands were gentle, not hurried, not mechanical, but deliberate, caring. Ava had learned long ago that kindness had a rhythm of its own. She spoke softly as she worked. "It's evening again, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice low and warm. "The sky looked beautiful tonight. Pink and gold, the kind you'd like." The old man did not respond. He rarely did. Doctors said he could hear. Others weren't so sure. But Ava didn't care what the charts said. She spoke to him every day, about the weather, about little stories from the outside world, about nothing and everything. Because she believed that somewhere inside that quiet body, he was still listening. She pulled a chair closer and sat beside him. The day had been long. Too long. Her feet ached. Her shoulders were tense. And behind her calm face, her own life felt just as fragile as the man lying before her. Bills piled up at home. Her mother's medicine was running out. Sleep had become a stranger. But none of that mattered here. Not in this room. Not now. Ava reached out and gently took Samuel's hand. His skin was cool, thinner than she remembered, but still real. "Still there. I'm here," she whispered. "I didn't forget." Her throat tightened. There was something about evenings like this, when the world slowed down and the walls seemed to listen, that made emotions harder to hold back. Ava had seen many patients in her years as a caregiver. Some were grateful, some were angry, some were forgotten. Samuel was forgotten. His room was almost always empty. No flowers, no visitors, no voices but hers. Once, months ago, she had asked him about his family. "Do you have children, Mr. Hale?" she had asked while feeding him soup. His eyes had flickered then, just for a moment. "One," he had whispered. "A son." That was all he ever said. Ava swallowed and brushed his hand gently. "I used to sing," she said quietly, not sure why she was saying it at all. "When I was little, my mother said it helped me sleep." She smiled faintly at the memory. "I haven't sung in a long time." The room felt smaller somehow. More intimate. The hum of machines faded into the background as Ava took a slow breath. Then, softly, almost hesitantly, she began to sing. It wasn't a performance. There was no confidence in it. No effort to be perfect. Just a simple lullaby, old and worn with time. Her voice was low, tender, carrying the weight of emotions she rarely allowed herself to feel. It trembled, not because she was afraid, but because she was human. Each word floated gently through the room, filling the empty spaces where silence had lived for too long. As she sang, her eyes closed. She sang about rest, about peace, about being held when the world feels too heavy. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. She kept singing. She didn't notice the old man's fingers twitch slightly in her hand. She didn't see his brow tighten, just barely, as if something deep inside him recognized the sound. And she didn't hear the soft click of footsteps stopping in the hallway outside. The door was slightly open. A tall figure stood just beyond it. He had been walking fast, purposefully, until the sound reached him. A voice. Soft. Broken. Honest. Daniel Hale froze mid-step. He wasn't supposed to stop. He had come for paperwork. Legal documents. Signatures. Decisions that required no emotion. Just business. That's how he lived his life. Efficient. Controlled. Distant. The old man in the room was his father. A man he hadn't visited in years. A man he told himself was already gone. But the sound of singing stopped him cold. Daniel leaned slightly toward the door, frowning. Who was singing? He looked through the opening. He saw a young woman sitting beside the bed, holding his father's hand like it mattered. Like it meant something. Her face was streaked with tears. Not dramatic tears. Not loud ones. The quiet kind. Daniel felt something unfamiliar stir inside his chest, tight, uncomfortable. He watched as she sang, unaware of his presence, her entire focus on the man lying before her. Not once did she look at the machines. Not once did she check the clock. She sang as if this moment was all that existed. Daniel's jaw clenched. He remembered another room. Long ago. A younger version of himself. A voice singing to him in the dark. He pushed the memory away. This wasn't his concern. And yet, he didn't move. Inside the room, Ava's voice softened toward the end of the song. Each note seemed to fade into the walls, lingering like a promise. When the last word left her lips, silence returned. But it was no longer heavy. It was full. Ava opened her eyes and gently squeezed Samuel's hand. I hope you like that, she whispered, embarrassed even though she was alone. I'm not very good. The old man's lips moved. Barely, so faint that she almost missed it. Her breath caught. She leaned closer. Yes, she whispered urgently. His hand tightened, just a little. Ava's eyes filled again. I'm here, she said, her voice breaking. You're not alone. Behind the door, Daniel felt his breath hitch. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about money, or meetings, or power. He was thinking about what it meant to be present. And he didn't know it yet, but that quiet room, that fragile song, and that unseen moment had already begun to change everything. Chapter 2. The silence after the song did not break immediately. It hovered in the room, soft, trembling, alive. Ava remained seated beside the bed, her fingers still wrapped around Samuel Hale's fragile hand. Her heart was racing now, not with fear, but with something she couldn't name. Hope, maybe, or disbelief. He had said her name. Or at least, she thought he had. She leaned closer, holding her breath, as if even the smallest sound might steal the moment away. Yes, she whispered again. I'm here. The old man's eyes fluttered open just slightly. They were clouded with age, unfocused, but they were open. His breathing deepened, steadier now, as if the song had reminded his body how to keep going. Ava felt tears blur her vision. She had learned not to expect miracles. She had learned that moments like these came and went like passing shadows. But still, when they happened, they felt sacred. She brushed his hair gently from his forehead. You don't have to worry, she murmured. Just rest. Behind her, the door creaked. The sound was small, but in the quiet room, it was thunder. Ava stiffened. She turned slowly, her heart leaping into her throat. A man stood just inside the doorway. Tall, well-dressed, still. His presence filled the room without a word. I'm sorry, Ava said quickly, standing up. I didn't realize anyone was here. The man didn't respond at first. His eyes weren't on her. They were on the old man in the bed. On his father. Daniel Hale stepped closer. For years, he had trained himself to walk into rooms like this without feeling anything. Hospitals, boardrooms, funeral halls, places where emotions made people weak. But this room was different. He saw his father's hand, held in someone else's. Not by nurses out of duty. Not by machines, but by a woman who looked as though she belonged there. Daniel cleared his throat. How long has he been like this? He asked. Ava hesitated. Several months, she answered softly. He has good days, and quiet ones. Daniel nodded, his face unreadable. And you sing to him? He asked. Ava's cheeks flushed. Only sometimes, she said. When the nights feel long. Daniel studied her. You know he can't respond, he said flatly. Ava met his gaze. I know, she replied. But I also know he can feel. Something in her voice made Daniel look away. He turned back toward the bed. Memories rose against his will, his father teaching him to ride a bike, his father's voice once strong and commanding, his father standing in courtrooms and offices like he owned the world. And then, the fights. The distance. The years of silence. Daniel hadn't come tonight to remember any of that. He had come to sign papers. "I'll need a moment alone," he said. Ava nodded immediately. "Of course," she replied. "I'll be outside if you need anything." She walked past him, her head lowered, her heart pounding. As she reached the door, Daniel spoke again. "Why do you stay late?" he asked. Ava paused. She didn't turn around. "Because no one should fall asleep feeling forgotten," she said quietly. Then she left. Daniel stood alone with his father. The room felt heavier now. He sat down slowly in the chair Ava had just vacated. The seat was still warm. He looked at Samuel Hale, not as a distant responsibility, not as a name on a document, but as a man who had once been everything to him. "I didn't know what else to do," Daniel said under his breath. "I thought giving you the best care would be enough." His father didn't answer, but his chest rose steadily. Calmly, Daniel swallowed hard. He reached out, awkwardly, uncertainly, and placed his hand over his father's. The grip was weak, but real. For the first time in years. Daniel stayed. The next morning, Ava was called into the administrative office. Her stomach twisted the entire walk there. She replayed the night again and again. The singing, the man in the doorway, the questions. She had crossed a line. She was sure of it. When she entered the office, Daniel was there. So were two administrators. Ava's hands trembled. "Yes?" she asked softly. Daniel stood. "Please sit," he said. She did. "I watched you last night," he began. "Not as an employer. As a son." Ava's breath caught. "You showed my father something I didn't realize he'd lost," Daniel continued. "Dignity, presence, love." The room was silent. "I'm not here to fire you," he said. "I'm here to thank you." Ava's eyes widened. Daniel slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, scholarship papers, debt clearance notices, and something else. "A foundation proposal. I'm starting a program," Daniel said. "In my father's name, to ensure caregivers like you are supported, trained, valued." Ava stared at the pages, stunned. I don't understand," she whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. "Because last night," he said, "I realized success means nothing if you abandon the people who made you." Tears filled Ava's eyes. "And there's one more thing," he added. He handed her a card. "Head Care Coordinator," it read. Her knees nearly gave out. Weeks passed. Samuel Hale lived longer than anyone expected. Not because of medicine alone, but because someone sang to him every night. Daniel came every day. He learned how to sit, how to listen, how to be present. And when his father finally passed, it wasn't in silence. It was with a hand held, a song softly playing, and a son who stayed until the very end. At the funeral, Daniel stood beside Ava. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for changing everything." Ava shook her head. "I didn't change anything," she replied. She looked toward the sky. "I just sang." Final impact line. She didn't know someone was watching. But her kindness was seen, and it changed a life forever.